Good morning, good afternoon, and thanks for joining. We'll wait a bit longer for everyone to come in, so just give us like a minute or two. Still seeing people joining. It's filling up. Um, but otherwise, let's.
Oh, sorry, you're on now. Okay.
Okay. While there are still some people joining, I actually believe we're ready to go, or?
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today here, and we're super excited to share what the Nextdata team has been working on for the past months around Data 3.0, and in particular making data ready for ML and the Gen AI range. Today we're actually live streaming, revisiting our authentic Silicon Valley startup roots from the founder's garage. I'm Jörg, head of engineering, and the person who probably does not need an introduction is here next to me, Jean-Marc Degani, creator of Data Mesh and founder of Nextdata.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Jörg, for the kind introduction. So if you see us, I look left and Jörg looks right, because we're actually sitting all in my home office, which is basically my garage. Sometimes we refer to each other maybe in the room. Okay, so with that said, we have a packed agenda today, and really excited to go through first sharing the shift that we are seeing live unfolding in our industry right now around data infrastructure and AI, to frame really the product that we've built and the features that we are releasing. Many of you may have seen our previous product demos, and you might be familiar with Nextdata. That would be certainly helpful. Our focus today are really on features that are a bit newer and recently released, but we will share the video to prior demos that we have given. And at the end, hopefully we can get to some Q&A and reflection on what we have seen and any questions that you might have. With that said, let me jump into a few slides to talk about what is this whole Data 3.0 about. If you think about time in our history where foundational rules, the very laws of physics based on which we build systems, get challenged, we are in one of those shifts and moments right now in the data and AI industry. Just using a dramatic analogy to make a point, for about 200 years, the Newtonian physics just worked, right? We built bridges, we put satellites in orbit, and we predicted the movement of the planets, and it was all fine. But then it stopped working. It stopped working because we got closer to the speed of light and quantum scale. And in that moment, we needed a completely new set of assumptions and Einstein theory of relativity to be able to build atomic clocks or operate GPS and particle accelerators. As dramatic as it sounds, that's where we are in the data and AI kind of stack and technology in our industry right now. The very laws of physics that they founded, how we process data management and roles and people and technology and architecture, all of that is being challenged. And it's being challenged under the stress of three important factors. The speed, most importantly, while the assumptions that we had made about data processing kind of worked for the speed of humans building dashboard, for the speed of humans building machine learning models, it no longer works when you build agents in a matter of minutes. You give a new prompt and you expect a new outcome, and that outcome relies on data that we know for a fact takes months to unlock, secure, make available in the format that the agents need. The second stressor is scale. The scale of making mistakes, when we had people looking at a dashboard, it was contained to misleading a group of people and making bad decisions. It was terrible. It wasn't great, but it's an irrecoverable mistake when you have agents operating on millisecond functions ubiquitously across your organizations, making decisions, taking actions, and those actions that have real impact on real people's lives and company and outcome are based on irrelevant data without the context and based on hallucination. And lastly, the complexity that we have built over the last few decades into our architecture, technology, and our processes is in a combinatorial way expanding and scaling up. Adding agents is not just about putting a few cute icons of robots on the diagrams or adding yet another ingestion model. It's going to affect all of the pieces that we have put together in a dramatic way. New modes of data sharing, new sources of data, new ways of getting access to the data, the whole stack will get affected. So what I want to offer to you today is a real critical look at what we have built. And all of the information I share with you is off the back of 7 years of experience in banging my personal head to the wall to really try to unpack the challenges that exist with the data systems in general. So the process is what I call data 2.0 is a moment in time where we are working with kind of modern data stack, best of breed, centered around storage and basically schemas. The process of data to value is too slow, too complicated. It takes 6 months to 1 year in some cases to unlock new sources of data, whether it's purchase data from syndicates or a new application or your SaaS products, it really doesn't matter. It takes 6 months to 1 year to make that data easily available to business to make an impact. And when you look at that process, it's biggest waterfall that I have seen. It reminds me of programming and building applications in the 90s where we had to go from having engineers to provision the infrastructure, and in this case they have to provision a lot of different tools, very fragmented complex set of technologies that they have to wire together. The people that represent the business or proxy the business request for those infrastructure pieces, all of them, so that they can deliver value. Folks that are responsible for ingesting the data that really don't understand what the data upstream is and what the use case downstream is, and in charge of dumping it somewhere so that we can take advantage of it. And those dumps become out of sync and cause a whole lot of downstream problem. Data modelers, data architects, sitting and modeling based on maybe use cases, maybe a collection of use cases, independent of often close, but yet independent of the business. In some modeling tool that is really not connected to the code, it's changing at a different pace in a different life cycle. The data stewards try to turn those models that are dumped into spreadsheets most of the time, turn them in data quality rules. And those data quality tools often assessing the data after the fact when it was already generated and used. Cat is out of the hat already. Data engineers putting pipelines and complicated pipelines from harmonizing and creating silver layers and gold layers and all of these different layers that maybe or maybe not relevant really to the business. And finally, governance coming in, scratching their head and saying, okay, I've got to put a semantic on that. And that, let me catalog it. Let me put a business semantic, business glossary around it. And by the time they do that, data has already moved on. And it's often, almost in majority of the cases, those two worlds are disconnected. And the poor consumer, when they come in, they have to find the data, and they have to find the data how? Based on schema, based on how that data was designed for the machine, not for the human. And find out what schema they need and go get access to the schema and so on and so forth. You get my point. And that complexity is now kind of being embedded into the architecture. It manifests itself in a very complicated parabol of pipelines and kind of the parabol of technologies that sits in this squishy middle between your foundation, your storage, your compute, your security, your quality, and the application of the data. And I have intentionally put a very sad face on my little robot here because that process, that squishy middle that we just looked at the process, take weeks, take months. Well, the robot or the agent really can tolerate only a few minutes. So we have seen this before. This is for me, I'm old, I've been around for a little while, and it's deja vu. I have seen this with like building software. We saw the DevOps movement, we've seen the agile movements. And from the technology perspective, we've seen the going to the cloud and containerization movements. And from technology perspective, we do one thing that has worked always, and that's what we intend to do here and show you today. We encapsulate complexity, we abstract it with APIs and clear interfaces, and we automate it. We make it relevant. And that's what we offer as the foundation for the next generation of data processing, data technology, we call it. I guess the next one is data 3.0. This abstraction has to be autonomous. Autonomous data products are an abstraction that encapsulate all of the artifacts and the processing that you saw in that long waterfall. The code, the data model, the semantic model, the policies, the contracts, the pipeline to sense and share the data in multiple modes, all encapsulated in a living, breathing artifact, which is a process, which is accessible through APIs. And it's built out of the box to meet and adapt variety and a heterogeneous environment, variety of technologies, to sit on different type of compute, to serve a different type of data. What would that look like? That parabol that we looked at will be replaced by a set of semantic first, domain-oriented, autonomous applications, autonomous services, autonomous data products that each can ingest and process and provide data in multiple modes. Maybe process it in batch, maybe process it in streaming, maybe it will provide a structured data, unstructured, or mixed model, both, depending on the domain. We no longer divide our stack based on technology. We divide our stack and work and the way we interact based on domains. And that data, that domain first data, can be represented as vectors to the agents, or as MCP endpoints to chatbots, or tables and SQL and so on. And that's how we reduce that time. The simplicity, data 3.0, demands a simplicity, a drastic simplicity in how we work. Having a waterfall of different teams, throwing over the wall different artifacts in different systems that are disconnected, to having one system, one artifact that we all are collaborating. As a data product owner, as someone who truly understands the business and the data, they can model and they can manage it. As a developer that puts the engineering muscle behind it and build the logic and the transformation inside it, they build and run the same artifact. As a consumer, I can come and based on business needs and intent and questions, find the data product that is relevant to me, the same artifact. And this artifact has a heartbeat. It's running. It's a service. So there are a few shifts that are happening as part of this movement from data 2.0, data 3.0. We are offering a change to you that moves from a very storage first stack that accessorizing the storage with pipelines and catalogs to a domain-oriented, autonomous, business process focused concept, that data product that can interact and connect with others so that we can see the impact that data needs, speed and safety. Some of the shifts that we hope to show you in this demo coming up is a shift from storage and structured data, so storage and schema first way of working to domain and semantic first way of working, so that the agent is aware of the context, that the data is really context aware, and it can find during its discovery or access to the data, the relevant data, and can build a ground its truth in based on the domain data that is available. The second shift is around modality, moving away, thinking about data as a set of files or a set of vectors or a set of graphs, to really thinking about data as a semantic, and that semantic happens to be served in different modes as vectors, as files, as tables. Discoverability, moving away from a human browsing and discovering and using the tribal knowledge to figure out what it is that they need, to an agent based on the intent that is provided to it in its prompt or in its code as prompt, be able to discover automatically and safely that relevant piece of data that they need to consult or get as part of the context to answer a question or achieve an outcome. Orchestration moves from externally orchestrated hairball of data pipeline to a self-orchestrated automated data products. That enables the speed. That it removes the friction of moving data around and piping different layers of data processing. And reasoning has to be built into the model. Instead of adding lineage on top and wiring it by looking at the pipelines, the lineage is built in based on the logic of the data product itself and its dependency to its adjacent nodes upstream and downstream. And finally, the governance cannot be an after-the-fact process with manual interventions. Instant safety built into the data product as a continuously running computational policies that at every touch point of that data product with the world, whether it's ingesting data, it has a touch point, whether it's serving the data, whether it's processing data, in every touch point is computationally enforcing contracts and policies and controls. All right, so we're not here to just make things linearly a little bit better. Data 3.0 needs a more ambitious vision and ambitious approach. We need to change this plateau of productivity and bend this curve to a 50x faster and radically much simpler way of going from data to innovation, and be able to maintain that velocity as we grow, as that x-axis moves forward, as you unlock new sources, as you become more ambitious with your use cases, as you embed AI in more of your business, you cannot slow down. All right, so that is the kind of the genesis of everything you see today or you have seen before. Our work is based on enabling and being a catalyst for this shift. We have a few features that we would love to show you as part of this demo. We would love to show you that domain first, semantic first, multimodal way of sharing data. We want to show you seamless agentic access to data. You don't need to build yet another, kind of hairball of point solutions. You can really get agents to directly talk to your data safely and reliably. And most importantly, we want to show you this target of 50x that we are in, consistently working toward, to go from some unknown, unmanaged source of data to data that is ready, safe, semantically rich, for access by agents. So with that said, there's a barcode on this. If you want to come and talk to us, get a demo, get a deeper demo, perhaps get your hands on a sandbox to play around, please take a picture of that QR code, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you. All right, shall we get to the demo, Jörg?
Yeah, I mean, presentations are great, right? But to learn about concepts, fundamentals, to understand the problem. But at least I'm always super excited to see what's the system behind this. What's the actual real system behind it? So let us see now what Data 3.0 looks in reality. To frame this, we're going to switch a little bit our hats. Jean-Marc is going to be a data product owner, a person who really understands business requirements and data, the expectations around it, and also the potential usage, right? Really a domain expert for that data. But she doesn't necessarily is a deep coder. She understands some code, and she has to go into character for that because she actually does. But in this role, her focus is going to be on the business requirements. I, on the other hand, I'm going to wear the head of a data product developer. So someone who's really close to the logic, understands transformations, the data engineering aspect of that. We both are part of the Nextopia organization, a retail business also offering financial services and loans to its customers. And our CEO has recently started a new initiative for expanding into a new market. And as preparation of this, we're actually doing analysis of markets and the different financial performances, and going to look at various competitors. And for that, we obviously have to look at different data sets. So with that, I hand over to our data product owner.
All right, thank you, Jörg. So Jörg and I both work in the finance domain. And as you can see on this mesh, we have a few different domains. We're retailers. So we have retail domain that focuses on sales and wholesales and online sales. And we have a finance domain that seems to be very busy analyzing the competitor information, market intelligence, regulatory. Every one of these domains have a team that's been building data products. And some of these you have seen. We show you the multi-channel sales and sales influence and so on before. And then now if I look at our competitors, it looks like we have some information about them. We've been gathering market intelligence and so on. But let's see what information do we have about competitors before we get started, because we have to answer quite deep, kind of deep business questions about their performance to decide whether we should move to that market or not. So we've got three domains: competitors, the products they offer, the regulatory compliance, and the market intelligence that we have gathered about them. And each of these domains have a few data products, right? So we have the competitor products that they offer. We can see they've been recently generated. We have market rates, market announcements, product competitiveness, public disclosures. All of this information can give us insights. But I don't see any financial information. So let's go and use Nextdata AI, our multi-agent system, to build a data product for us around the financial performance of these companies. Nextdata AI interacts with us in a hybrid mode. You can see now all the elements that constitute a working data product presented here. Their models, input, outputs, promises, policies, control. And you can either work in prompt, or you can interact with the screen and get guided what you need to build. The guide includes semantic models, inputs, outputs. We can start anywhere we want, but as a semantic first, I want to start with the semantic. So to capture, to get the semantic in, I want to start with looking at the source data. This is a financial statements, as we get these as files or as file dumps or sources of APIs from upstream. And we sometimes purchase these, or sometimes we go to SEC API to get these SEC filings. So in this case, I can pass a URL. I don't have to really say what format it is. It can infer that. So I'm going to provide a URL for getting access to the source data so that we can process it and get the relevant information about the competitor out and start the process. So the process starts. I have provided now the URL to an API endpoint where we can fetch this information. And next, what is next to doing is really fetching data, sample data from that URL. It needs some credentials. So I have access, and my user has access to a certain API services. And I have provided the API service to SCC endpoint, which has all the credentials and details behind it. To get access to it is fetching the data, and it's analyzing the data, and it's looking at the web, looking at what we have already on the mesh, what domains we have, what data products we have, what semantic those have. And it's now inferred 3 different models in that. It has inferred that there are balance sheets. These are simple, relatively simple models. But balance sheet information about the competitors. It has found cash flow kind of statements. And it also has the kind of the collection of the documents that point to the actual document types and extracted some metadata about those documents. As a default operation, it has now created an output for analysts. So by default, knowing what infrastructure I have, my user has access to, it has selected Snowflake to produce this data as tables on a more tabular output. And it has created some promises, some contracts that they will always assure that this data product will provide the balance sheet and cash flow based on those storage agnostic structure of the data that we decide. And it's getting the data from this input, which is an API input. On the left-hand side, you can see that it's making some recommendations and say, hey, I'm seeing a column that is not really semantically relevant. This column 0, maybe we should just, it was an index that came from, a previous system. It's relevant. Let's drop that. That's not part of the semantic. It's making some recommendations around some constraints and rules to put on the semantic model. It has decided that maybe hourly trigger to receive this data is fine, and has, as I said, it has decided to put this on Snowflake. And I'm going to confirm kind of these suggestions. Of course, I can go back and challenge and say, like, do different things. But I'm going to just confirm the recommendation that it has made, and let's see what's going to happen. Once it's confirmed, you can see that it starts now inferring the name. So from the name being SEC competitor summary. I'm not in love with the name, to be honest, but it's good enough. And it has a reasonable description that it has inferred, again, from the data that it has seen and the other information about the mesh it has. And it has also kind of, if you look at the top, it oh yeah, it actually dropped the columns as well. And it's decided that it should belong to finance domain. Well, that's a good start. It didn't decide that it should define onto retail domain or risk domain. So it has made some good first choices. And it also dropped, as I said, if you look at the columns, the fields on the right-hand side is defined. Let's change the name. This is really about financial statements, the balance sheets and cash flow. That we can change it to. And while the finance is pretty good, I want to change the domain as well. I want to change the domain to be a subdomain within finance. So finance, financial performance, let's say. So we make the change. I can change it in UI, or I can change it in prompt. This is a hybrid experience, and whichever experience is more relevant for that function, the user can decide to do that. So now the metadata is updated, and let's look at it. Yep, the domain has changed. We are, I think we are good to go. Let's launch the data product. So again, I had an option of clicking on a button on the bottom right-hand side, but I, just for the show and the demo, I'm talking to the agent and asking to launch. So what is happening during the launch? This data product is a process. It's going behind the scene. Here we go. It's up. What it did was it went behind the scene. It basically captured, provisioned a lot of different things. You can see how it's still giving me some other recommendations that I can add more contracts to it. It's running. It's reading from the source and producing the data on that Snowflake output that we described. In this case, I didn't give it much logic in terms of the code. It was very simple, pretty much dump and drop a column, and it's producing the data live. And here we go. So I think as a data product owner, really, this was the extent of my work as at this stage to shape the data just enough. I could have done a little bit more here, of course. And I want to, at this point, pass it to Jörg. And my request for Jörg is really to make this a multimodal data product that we can have agentic usage for it. We can have data scientists to use it. Make sure that we are protecting the data product against upstream. So if you have bad data upstream, it's protected. And it's also, we are introducing compliance, computational compliance for the data product. So passing to you, Jörg.
Yeah. Do you have any additional requirements, agentic use,
100%.
Hmm?
Yes. I
Oh.
want to ask, I mean, at the end of the day, we really want to allow business to talk to the data directly, talk to data products. So in this particular case, I want to be able to chat and ask questions around revenue and growth. And, the outcome that we want to achieve is that we have a good understanding of our competitors' growth and revenue in the market. So is it worth moving to that market or not? So yes.
Okay. Let me give it a stab, and then I'll get back to you. It's really great to see everyone can create data products nowadays across the entire organization. Let's have a quick look at the actual code Nextdata has generated. We see it here, looks like a great foundation. Maybe let's just tweak that a little bit to get it ready to be deployed in our production mesh. This is roughly like 45 minutes later. I actually given it a step. I updated the transformation logic to run on Databricks because this is just more scalable for the really large data sets we are handling there in our production system. Secondly, I also added some input expectations. This means we are checking before running any code that the data is valid, which might be a potentially really expensive job out there. Next, we added the rec output, so the vector embedding output Jean-Marc has requested, which means we can connect like a chatbot or something against it. This is using our NXT Pinecone service. And that's a really nice concept because I, as a data product developer, I only can reference kind of that infrastructure profile. I didn't have to worry about. The infra team has set that up great. And just keep in mind, like all those ports are being updated in parallel. So both our ADLS and Pinecone will be updated in parallel and always be in sync. I remember those times when they used to get out of sync. We got paged because the embeddings was driven by another ETL pipeline. So this is really great to see that the data product lifecycle is updating them in parallel. Last but not least, she also asked for like agentic use. So we can also add another output. And those you can see here as the RPC function. So I always see it as like, those are the questions this data product can really answer well. And because I know this data product and the domain it serves, I can actually reasonably instruct the LLM or it gives a metadata about what questions it can answer. With that, we are actually ready to deploy it. So just hitting NXT launch here. And then let's take a look how it's launching. Here again, it's building and then it's starting the process. And interestingly, it is red. I hope I did everything right, but let's take actually a look what I might have missed here. Yeah, also seeing failed here, but everything else actually looks good. Input expectations are passing. Let's take a look at the manage tab. And oh yeah, I see it here. The policy evaluation is failing. Policies are a global concept, and what I assume has happened, our central governance team actually came in, and because they want safe use for like AI, they have defined that new rule I actually wasn't aware about because they just recently introduced it. And I failed to comply to this policy, and this is actually a PII policy. So there's some risk we might be exposing sensible data. And it's really good that it caught it before we might have leaked data. It's actually fairly easy to add that. So If we go in, all what I'm missing is a particular promise, which is centrally defined, so I can also just reference that. Um, and this is because our Pinecone embedding output port, right, because we're playing in this AI range, is requiring that additional promise. Let us quickly just add that here. That's a custom promise. I said it's pulling that code from like a centrally defined place. And all our promises, keep in mind, they're evaluated during the data product lifecycle. I think this is always like quite important because previously we got paged when something went wrong. This is actually evaluated before data get consumed. With that, let's actually relaunch. Again, we see packaging, it's starting and building the process. And with that, let us reload. And I think I'm on the wrong mesh here for a second. Let me just quickly search again. Here we go. Yes, now it's green. It was still reloading, so I just had to search for it again. And now we see it's green. We are complying to our policies and our promises. So this is great to see. Jean-Marc, here's actually your data product ready for the production consumption.
Thank you so much, Jörg. Here, I think, it was great work on Jörg worked on financial statements. A few days have passed, and I'm coming back to the mesh to see what's going on and whether I can, I have the data products that we need in the business domain. So let's now look at the mesh one more time, and it looks like that finance, our team has been very busy. If you look at the finance domain, now we have financial performance, and in financial performance, we have financial statements and quite a few other data products that are live consuming data from this one. Let's look under the hood, see what Jörg has been up to. Yeah, I can see his name right there. And data products started running. It looks like there has been some promises that have been failing. Oh, okay, we've got the revenue functions added. We are seeing data scientist output on daily analysis added, vector embedding, and also MCP APIs for agents are being used. And we have expectations that protect this data product from bad data coming in, and additional freshness checks and PII checks as code running in live on this data product. Looking at its kind of downstream, let's see who is actually using this data product right now. Oh yeah, we moved actually compute to Databricks as well. So let's look at the downstream. We are seeing a competitor growth analysis, which is a fairly sophisticated data product that doing growth analysis by, let me expand this preview so we can see it, is getting live, synchronizing live information from multiple upstream data products, public disclosure, income statements, financial statements we just built, market announcements, and it calculates the growth, and it keeps also the original documents that has been fed upstream as well. And in the growth calculation, we can see that it has also symbolic now links to other related data products. For example, date of the calculation of the growth is derived from financial statements information we got. We've got now growth related functions and as MCP endpoints added to it. And with that, if I were an analyst, I would just go to the Snowflake output and request access. And behind the scene, we would work with your security infrastructure to get access to that particular Snowflake schema. And I can go to a BI tool and build a dashboard. But in this case, I really want to talk to this data product. I want to use an agentic technology to use it. So for simplicity of this case, I'm just gonna use Claude Desktop to ask a question. And it's very simple. This is just an off-the-shelf open source tool, and it's only one setting I had to set. And the setting was the endpoints to the MCP gateway on the mesh that we provide out of the box. What this endpoint then provides is MCP tooling that the OS provides to you and the data product. For example, we can ask what data products are available. This is an MCP tooling that our OS provides out of the box that tells you about all of the data products. So it's contemplating, it's working on it, and it's consulting that system data product. We have a few system data products that you don't see on the mesh, it belong to the system. This gives you discovery information. We have 23 data products on this mesh in different domains, and it's listing them, and I can see how our tutorial demo is also sneaking in there. And then I can see who has been accessing this data product over the last 7 days. Because every data product is sitting at the intersection of access, ingestion, control, all of that, we have very rich information that it looks like the sales and retail domain has been doing better than finance, and finance doesn't have as much activity as the other ones. We're gonna make that
fairly new.
Yeah, it's fairly new. So now let's ask the real business questions. Who are our competitors in terms of revenue? Now we are talking to the data products themselves. We're talking to financial statements in the demo environment, and we're getting the top revenue. And this data, some of it is true data, some of it is scrub data, some of it is synthetic data. So don't hold us accountable for correctness of the actual, numbers that you see. We try to be correct. And then ask about kind of the growth, right? We are interested in the net income growth of one of these companies in the last year. Let's say JB Hi-Fi was one of our competitors, and we ask about that. And in this case, now we are consulting the competitor growth analysis data product, and we're getting the growth from that. And it's providing, again, from the same semantic. Remember, I could ask these questions in a dashboard. From the same semantic, now I'm getting that information in a way that is relevant to the agentic technology. So I'm pretty happy now at this point with the data products they have, and hopefully the business that people that are really thinking about these new business impactful moves are also happy with the simplicity of getting to information safely and reliably. Of course, behind the scenes security is in place. And that concludes our demo. We really wanted to show you a quick walkthrough of discovering, building, and using. And we showed that in different personas as a data product owner and as a data product developer. Super.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making the concept of data 3.0 real. And especially like looking back at my earlier career, this is like, I'm super excited about it. But maybe a question for you. What would you say were the most important shifts you observed in this demo?
Really, I think the most important shift is that before and after in terms of time, complexity, and experience, right? So I think that is the biggest shift. Like, we didn't go from one tool to another tool to another tool, one persona to another persona, one artifact to another artifact to another artifact, all of them disconnected. It all happened in context, in business, focus on the business concept that we define as financial statements here, or competitor growth, and all of those different artifacts necessary to build were combined into a single runtime, build time and runtime standard. And hopefully that new experience and simplicity was evident in really what we show. And to me, the catalyst is abstraction of infrastructure provisioning there. Do you think it might be worthwhile to just, like, we did a quick walkthrough of what we think are these major shifts that need to happen from, kind of schema first, storage first, data 2.0 with modern data stack decorating it, to this semantic first and domain first. And it might be worthwhile for the audience to just go through those shifts and, reflect on the demo where those shifts were demonstrated.
I mean, maybe I can start just from my own personal experience. I think the points which in the past really caused sleepless nights were, for example, data getting out of sync, right? So the multi-model aspect of it, making sure that data gets updated in different representations, in kind of, I don't want to say atomic transaction, but basically in one holistic transaction. I think this is really key because in that data 3.0 world, we are having different consumers. We are having human consumers and needing a different representation. On the other hand, we got the autonomous consumers, all our agents, right, which often have different access pattern and also, yeah, just often require different physical formats for the data to be accessed. I think the second part, which is just a big shift for me, I remember being paged for, oh, our data is broken, therefore our live site is down, it's impacting customers, fix it now. And I think this is the other aspect of where we talked about promises. And recall that the data product is actually, it is a living process, right? It has a life cycle. So within that life cycle, those promises are checked. It's not a post fact check. It's actually happening before the data is made available to consumers. And I feel this has haunted me in my past already, but I feel it's even more important if we are talking in this data 3.0 range where we have autonomous consumers. All our agents, they have no way of even spotting like very simple mistakes in there, which a human might spot, right? They're just going to go blindly in and consume that data. So I feel that's kind of the other side to that, having the data quality checks kind of like in process is a big game changer for me.
Yeah, I think multimodality, I would double down on that one, maybe double click into that, because let's not pretend that we know what modality will be required tomorrow. We're at this transitional phase that we are figuring it out for autonomous use, what the modalities are. So I think any solution, particularly us when we build this, we assume we actually don't know what's going to come next. But what we know is that business semantic will always be there. Business semantic, how we describe products, how we describe financial transactions, like that is the foundational ground truth that is always going to be there, no matter we serve that as MCP v1 or v2 or something else, and RAG and vector and the things that we have to discover. So I think that having one semantic first and multiple modes of access are really, really key. The next one for me, as a geek, maybe a bit, is this orchestration. We have so much been like ingrained in this idea of immersed in this idea of pipelines. We see the data processing as a pipeline. We see the people's roles in a pipeline, and collapsing that pipeline into a self-orchestrated, autonomous, automated application in a way with beautiful and simple interfaces to do things with it through APIs, define this model, mutate this model, add new modalities. Like that for me is the biggest shift that needs to happen. ETLs at the micro level, if you really go deeper, of course there's an ETL that is ultimately in that data product is ingesting, is processing, is serving. But that's not the construct that we have to think about when we think about our experience. So that self-orchestration is a big one for me.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the other one, which you hinted at that in the beginning, I feel there's a lot by having everything in this one system, right? So there was also one question about, is there a graph database being used here?
Yeah.
And yes, we have a lot of graph concepts in the background. And also personally, if you look at my background, I used to be CTO at a graph database vendor. So yes, there are a lot of graph concepts. So for example, like lineage, if I would do that in a system pre-data mesh, pre-Nextdata, what I would have to do, I would have to keep lineage across all those different systems, especially if I'm like in a more constrained domain. Like if I look at our customer base from like finance over like other regulated domains, it is very crucial for them to have this audit trail and also the lineage trail. Where is my data coming from? How was it impacted? So that I can always go back and just kind of like that ease of setup, which is stitching together and connecting just a lot of different systems. So also we talked about promises before, right? Nextdata can interface with other tools where if I have existing promises in, for example, Monte Carlo or something, we can interface with that, but we make it holistically available throughout the entire stack. And as I said, we enforce it within that process. So I think just that one single place for all the metadata lineage to be across a potentially very varying tech stack. I think this is the other key part. And this is me wearing kind of like a more operations hat, but I think this is a game changer for operations.
All right, so Jörg and I are super passionate about this. We can go on and talk about it, but we have really good questions. So I want to make sure we get to some of the questions. Andy Chang had a wonderful question that said, well, the shift to semantic first make a lot of sense and it's very convincing, but curious to hear what's your suggestion to adopt this product service in an established enterprise from both the technology's perspective as well as from the culture's perspective. Wonderful question. Like one of the the main concerns of any enterprise that's been around, any company, frankly, enterprise or not, that has been around for a while and been doing data processing, particularly at the scale of enterprises, how does this fit into my world? I have people with different roles, existing established roles. I have technology with established technology and data pipelines that are doing whatever, the data processing they're doing today. So we have established a proven path that we have run with large enterprises. You can see them on our website, some of them kind of the statements on our website, which is really founded in two different pillars. One, what are you going to do strategically, and what you're going to do technically, and what you're going to do in operationally, right? So I think from the strategic perspective, and this change, regardless of what pillar we're looking at, has to be something that fits into where you are and deliver value very quickly. What I'm going to talk about is not about yet another multi-year transformation that it may or may not deliver any results. That's not the point. So in terms of like how we have worked and how we have deployed kind of Nextdata, I can share that experience. I don't have experience beyond that in the context of Data 3.0. In our case, first of all, we suggest that you kind of, from a strategic perspective, be very clear where, in what domain and what part of the business data is moving fast and would require to be moving into this kind of semantic first, data product first experience. And that's often the layer that is closer to your application, the layer that is closer to your business. If you're a bank, your system of records in mainframes haven't changed for decades. So and you have probably been already very busy for now, probably decades as well, pulling data out of those mainframes to data lakes and your storage. That's not necessarily maybe a good place to start, but start from somewhere that you see the fastest moving application of your data, which means the fastest iterations over data. From technical perspective, we, in fact, we demoed this in our last launch video, that we encapsulate your existing pipelines and existing your data foundation, and we wrap them up as data product. Data product V1, you still got to go and iterate over it, but at least you have a starting point. You can use agentic technologies to, in a co-piloted fashion, to wrap existing pipelines, existing assets as data products. We have done that, and we've done that in a matter of weeks with hundreds of data products, and it's doable, it's real. They probably not the most perfect data products, but at least they have the semantic, they have the discoverability, they have all of the foundational pieces that you can do it. In doing so, in the past, we have exposed problems that have been hidden, sitting inside your data pipelines, and you weren't seeing that. We have exposed unused, kind of piles of data being produced, and so on and so forth. So you get that kind of bootstrapping from 0 to 100, 0 to how many data products very quickly, again, using Nextdata in a brownfield function. And lastly, people and processes. There was a really good question said, so what does this mean in terms of data architects, data modelers? What happens to their role? I would go back again. You look back through the histories, having seen this happen before. When we went through the DevOps movement, operations people whose job was send me your package and I will install it and then I'll figure out how to observe this. In the DevOps movement, operational role didn't disappear, but their skill set and their function evolved to be more collaborative and integrated into the developer's development lifecycle, right? So we evolved from I'm an ops to I'm an SRE engineer. So I think the same thing will happen. The data stewards, as a great examples of that is data stewards. We're working with folks that represent the governance team that usually come really late in the company, in the process of the data, and generate models, right? They go and literally type in the UI of the catalogs of this is the business glossary, this is the description, and so on and so forth. We're saying, hey guys, how about you become a data product owner and shift left that function right at the beginning when the data gets touched and ingested, as you saw the role that I played. So that's kind of, I think there are paths to leapfrog this change and make it possible. And again, we position ourselves as a catalyzing technology, as an enabler, not the only technology. We sit on top of your foundation, your storage, your compute, expensive foundational technology that you've invested in, and you need a catalyst to make that leap. Any questions that are your favorite we should answer?
Yeah, I actually have like a range of questions, both in the chat, but also here about like legacy. How do we connect to legacy systems? And I feel that was a bit due to time. We skipped over that a little bit during the demo. But I think one important aspect of Nextdata is the concept of drivers, right? So drivers actually allow us to connect to various compute and storage services. And I think in this demo, we saw the Snowflake driver, we saw the Databricks driver, and it kind of abstracts that infrastructure, right? So first of all, I can also switch over. And also the driver, for example, to this one particular question is implementing kind of like the polling and checking whether there's new upstream data. Relating that a little bit, there was, I think, one or two questions in the chat actually earlier about how do we manage this infrastructure part. I briefly showed that if I'm, for example, using Pinecone, if I'm using Databricks, I have, as a data product developer, I have a service available. This is defined by like the central infrastructure team, and all they have to do in this new world is they have to set up the infrastructure as kind of like a self-serve for me, right? They don't have to know what data I'm using, but I don't have to know how they set up the system, right? Division of labor. And that is kind of the concept of infrastructure profiles. So it's kind of like a bundle of services I have access to use. And that's kind of like connecting then to the actual services underneath I might use.
All right, let's get one more question before we wrap it up. Maybe one or two more questions. There's a good question from Brian asking, cool way to build new products. It still requires existing data sets, products to be in place and well described. Any recommendations on how to get to that state? I think, again, we call this like a bootstrapping. How do you bootstrap your mesh? Also, how do you bootstrap your data product, right? So I think the bootstrapping the mesh can happen. I think in the previous conversation we just talked about from your brownfield. If you are a company and that has a lot of data assets, you have these data assets already. They're sitting in your maybe SAP system, maybe they're sitting in your lake, maybe they're sitting in your warehouse. You have pipelines moving data from one place to another and cleanse them and harmonize them. You can wrap, again, put domain boundaries, business domain boundaries against the existing assets that you have. It's not perfect, but it's a starting point. And again, using agentic technology next to in a brownfield mode, it can infer the name, the descriptions, those metadata from the data that you have and from the access to that data that it can see. So bootstrapping from existing assets, it's absolutely the first step to start then building a cohort of data products that can be added to it. And if you're completely greenfield, like you go to a new business domain and there isn't much in place and it's you're directly talking to SAP or to SAP or directly talking to purchased information, then you go through a bootstrapping in a greenfield fashion where you connect to the source of data through APIs or any other ingestion mechanism that's part of the construct of the data product. Underneath it, it manages that ingestion process itself. And it processes data, it looks at the data and give you a first version of it that as a then human in the loop, you can go, add and change description. So I think it gives you a co-pilot to start from existing assets or from new assets, and it doesn't need you to start with something that is already built, but it gets more powerful and stronger by having more data products and their semantic and their usage available as a context to build a new one. So that context doesn't need to be in the human's brain. The context become available to Nextdata.
Cool. Do we have time for one last one?
I don't know. Do you have like really one
Yes,
to say?
I would, because I like that
It's 9:30.
question. It's a question about like data product consumption and metrics. And I
Okay.
think this is one head we kind of like, again, for time reasons, skipped over in the demo. But of course, also a data platform owner would be a consumer of Nextdata. We have insights dashboards where I can see consumption across a mesh. I can see how many compute time did I spend, for example, on Databricks? How long did my accumulated job run? I can of course also breaks it up for domains. I can see like, is a finance domain spending more money than another domain? But I basically also, as a platform owner who wants to get an overview, where am I spending my money? Where is things being adopted? Which domain is creating most data products? There's basically those central, we call them insights dashboards, giving me access to that.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna add last with one sentence: business domain first. So even if you're looking at the metrics, you start looking at them by business domain and by data products aligned to those domains first, and then technology second. Because guess what? One domain might be on one cloud and the other domain on another cloud. You can have a multi-cloud deployment with data products all on different technology stacks, and this domain first approach abstracts that complexity away. All right. Well, thank you so much for your thoughtful questions, your attentions. We are stoked that we had a chance to share what we've been working on, and we love to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, everyone. Have a great Thursday or Friday if you're in Australia.